What if I told you that the greatest adventure movie of all time came out in 2005? The same year Ugg boots became popular and YouTube was invented. My name is Sore Loser, and let me take you on a journey of peril and adventure in one of my favorite movies of all time. If you want to skip straight into the action, then please go to this time. And I hope you will stick around for my part 2. Thank you, and please enjoy. Our story flies straight out of the gate, revealing King Kong. JK, it's just a monkey at a zoo. We see some shots of some people down on their luck in New York. Glad to see much hasn't changed. Hey, we see you eating out of that garbage can. Next we see some theater actors, and this guy always makes me laugh. Before we are treated to one of our MCs dancing away, only for it to be revealed that there's not many in the crowd. Afterwards, our blonde MC, Anne, is chatting with this guy, Manny, about how he's all she has. How heartwarming. The next morning, the theater is closed down. Everyone is very upset by this, including Manny, who tells Anne that he's done and he's going back to Chicago. So wait, this line,
"You're all I've got."
don't mean nothing to you, Manny, huh? He tells her to try out for a new play part and says deuces. Anne keeps pestering the director about an audition, but is told that the part is already cast. But he is nice enough to tell her that she can still get a meal and money if she goes into prostitution. Oh, okay. Next, we are introduced to another one of our MCs as his new film is being shown to a board of investors. And it's not going well. They are mad about potentially wasting money, but Carl Denham smooth talks his way through it. He whips out a mysterious map of an uncharted island and talks of a ruined civilization, the most spectacular thing you've ever seen. They ask him to step out, and we see his assistant, Preston, hand him a cup. He uses it to listen in on the conversation going on, and it's not going well, so they bolt with all their equipment. Preston goes on about how leaving isn't ethical, but Carl says,
"What are they gonna do, sue me? Huh? Get in line."
I feel it, Carl. They grab a taxi and are almost caught, but this is back when New York taxis still had integrity and would floor it when you said floor it. Preston informs our boy that they still need an actress, so Carl goes to a brothel to look for one. This is where he sees Anne in the door's reflection, who isn't interested in selling herself and walks away. She spots a fruit stand and steals an apple, but gets caught, and is about to get in trouble when Carl appears and pays for it. A whole ass nickel for an apple. Damn, I wish. Anyways, we cut to Anne and Carl eating dinner. Well, just Anne eating, really. Carl breaks the ice by asking if she fits into a size 4 dress, and she gets up to leave. He talks her down and spins the movie idea to her. She buys it hook, line, and sinker, and then gets this 1,000-yard stare when talking about love. I mean, alright, to each their own, but then she says this.
"Good things never last, Mr. Denham."
And the tone shifts into something more foreboding. Let me tell you, I love these moments in this movie, where someone just says something so profound and relevant to a future scene, and all the characters have a bad feeling about what was actually said, as if they know their adventure is not a happy one. Sorry, I'll stop soying out about it. Actually, you know what? No, I won't. Fuck you. Moving on, Anne says no, but changes her mind when she hears Jack Driscoll is writing the script. Oh my goodness. The Jack Driscoll? What a sexy man. We cut to a shipyard with people hurriedly loading on equipment. Preston meets with Carl and he tells him the cops are coming to shut them down. This puts some pep in his step and he tells the captain, Englehorn, to set sail. But he says no. They are waiting on a manifest, so Carl offers to pay him even more to set sail now. But when the captain sees Anne, he is smitten by her looks and is willing to set off for said cash. Carl meets with Jack Driscoll, who complains about being late to a rehearsal. He gives our boy just 15 pages of a script, which is not enough for his movie, so he hatches an idea. He offers to pay Jack $2,000 via check. Look at that smile. That's the same smile I get when someone offers me $2,000. Or a chicken nugget. But he keeps writing the check wrong on purpose. Oh, smile gone. This causes Jack to not get off in time and is stuck on the ship. Honestly, he could have jumped. Dockyard water isn't that bad. You just need loads of antibiotic shots afterwards, due to the many diseases and chemicals in the water. Carl appears to also say that he should have jumped Lamau. So our crew is off. The adventure begins. We cut to Choi, who is a homie, showing Jack to his quarters. This is where we find out that this ship carries exotic animals, and the captain is very good at capturing them. Speaking of, the captain appears to say sorry for the accommodations, but offers him the lion cage to sleep in. When Jack opens the door, a big bottle of chloroform falls out, and everyone gets really serious looking. Which, I get, it's kind of foreboding about what exactly they're going out to do, but it's really not that surprising. They capture animals. It's not really that serious, Jack. Calm down. The next day, we quickly meet Bruce Baxter, famous movie star and self-absorbed skadooshbag, before cutting to Jack getting his lunch from a young, respectable lad named Jimmy. And yeah, that actually looks like cat food. And then we meet Hayes, my second favorite character behind Carl, who stops Jimmy because he stole Jack's pen. Aight, Jimmy, now you've been demoted to just a young lad. Hayes returns the pen and says Jimmy doesn't mean any harm. He just came from a bad place. Hayes continues his conversation with Jimmy topside and tells him that he's got to get his act together. You know, get an education. Jimmy says that he is, and he's even been reading from a book that he, borrowed. But that book he is reading comes into play later. Also, it's great. You should read it. It may remind you of something. Next, we get to meet some of the film crew. Herb the cameraman, Lumpy the goat, the cook, Mike the sound guy, who Anne mistakes for the Jack Driscoll. Whoops. We briefly see Jack and Carl discussing this secret island, and we get one of the few weirdly filmed slow motion scenes where everyone looks like they're about to throw up for some reason. But Jimmy happens to hear exactly where they're going, which spooks the crew when word gets around. We see a few more scenes where they are rehearsing, and Jack is obviously falling in love with Anne. Alright, now we get to the part where I had to wake my wife back up to watch. The crew is on edge, but we get to see them all interacting. A slow-mo telegraph comes in, and the ship turns around to turn in Carl for a rest at the nearest port. But the compass starts to act funny. Hayes reports that he can't see the stars to check the ship's course, and the vessel enters a thick fog. Everyone stares out in uncomfortable silence as the captain orders a lead line be thrown out. At first, they read no bottom.
30 fathoms, no bottom.
But then, they find seabed. Visibility is 0 as they continue shallowing, and Jimmy spots a massive wall in their way. The crew look on in horror as they realize they're gonna hit, and the shockwave careens everyone forwards. They quickly reverse, only to find that there are rocks everywhere. A wave takes the ship and slams it into one, ripping it around the stone. The captain full of heads, but the ship is thrown one final time into another rock, where it sits, pinned. Carl spots a face in the rock, and the crew gets to work fixing the holes below deck. God, I hope I managed to capture even a little bit of magic that these scenes have. Looking out, Carl sees the massive wall built on the island, so he takes this opportunity to take out his team for some filming. The captain notices and says, fuck 'em, we got a ship to fix, and we see Jimmy ask Hayes why the character Marlowe from his book keeps pushing upriver. Hayes tells him that there's a part of Marlowe that wants to turn back, but a part of him that needs to know what lies ahead, to defeat that which makes him afraid. Ooh, foreshadowing. We get some shots of Carl's group traveling further inland, seeing lots of signs of obvious danger that goes ignored. When they get to a big gate, Jimmy then realizes his book is not an adventure story. It's something darker, much like this film. I'm so sad I can't play music, but the score is so good. Y'all definitely need to watch this shit. Upon investigating deeper, Carl says this place is deserted, despite finding evidence of the contrary. To drive this home, they find a small girl who does this weird hand thing. Anne wants to go back, but Carl says he'll handle this. He whips out some chocolate, but the girl isn't interested. She bites him, and they find out that there's more people here. Carl says it's fine though, there's just women and old people, so they're good. Mike then immediately catches a spear in the back for Carl's excellent observations. Anne screams, a giant monster screams back, and this old lady starts to say Tori Khan, and even the ship's crew hears it. The group finds themselves surrounded by natives, but this is no episode of Casting Couch, as they force this guy, unnamed venture crewman, who gets sacrificed on this stone via stick. Carl's up next for bonking, but Jack is being too feisty, so he gets the quick noggin tap, where he spots this necklace. Just before Carl gets got, his would-be killer is shot. Wow, that rhymed. Engelhorn and the crew show up and start blasting. They successfully rescue Carl's group, -2, and get back to the ship, where we see Carl and the crew talking about what happened. Carl says he's going to donate the proceeds of his film to Mike's kids and wife, and they drink to that. But not all is well, as we see the natives making their way to the ship. Man, those poles must be very long. That's what she said. No, she didn't. Oh. Jack wakes up and sees the necklace from one of the natives is on board and goes to find Anne. He finds her missing as the ship breaks free of the rock and goes to tell everyone but slips on this guy's blood. How rude to leave your shit all over the floor like that. The captain is informed about Anne, and in the distance, a great fire and drumming can be seen and heard. We see the natives preparing for a sacrifice and party, and quick side note while this plays out, I honestly think the natives that we see here are not the same people that built the wall, but what's left of their descendants. Anyways, the crew of the ship surprisingly springs into action, grabbing rifles and Tommy guns to rescue her. Oh, and Carl comes along too. I honestly thought that they'd be like, oh well, she's dead, let's go. However, they are a bit too slow, as Anne is tied up and lowered out into the forest, where we see a giant creature knocking down trees as it approaches, and hear her screams as it grabs her. We know it's Kong, but just pretend you don't know yet, thanks. Only Carl is quick enough to see what it is. This frightens him, and his reaction scares the others. This doesn't deter anyone, though, as they load up to go after her. Jimmy tries to come along, but is told no. Naturally, Carl and his boys bring the camera equipment. The captain tells them they have 24 hours to return, or they'll be left behind. And our group sets off into Skull Island. Oh boy, I'm so excited. Well, they don't make it very far before they hear strange noises and stop with guns drawn. They can't handle the pressure and start randomly firing into the night before Hayes gets them into control and lights a flare. We then see our first dinosaur, a Pharacutus cerastes, charge out. It rampages around and launches a few crewmen. Preston almost gets stepped on, but is saved at the last second. It continues ragdolling people, even Jack Driscoll gets some, before Hayes puts it down for good. Now this dinosaur is likely a descendant of Pachyrhinosaurus, due to its large flattened boss over its nose. But we can see that the crest and horns are larger and more pronounced. We will be talking about them more in the analysis because somebody asks that aren't dinosaurs supposed to be extinct, and Lumpy just says,
They are now.
Carl is there, filming its death throes before the group moves on. We cut to Anne being rushed through the forest before coming face to face with Kong, who just starts manhandling her.
There comes a giant fish!
She sees that she's not the first to be brought here, so she stabs his hand with her necklace. But she gets about 20 feet before Kong picks her up again. The crew finds the remains of the other sacrifices and sees the damage that Kong caused. This causes Hayes to discover Jimmy is present, that little rascal. They don't stop though, because next we see some giant mosquitoes bothering the men. And my boy Lumpy takes the appropriate action. Yeah, bitch! Next, Jack finds a Kong footprint and everyone gathers around to see. Meanwhile, Carl gets Jack to stand in front of some brontosauruses, which are a genus of herbivorous sauropod dinosaur that lived in North America during the late Jurassic period. Yet, here they are, somehow. I wonder if they were upset about their genus being reassigned. Probably, because they start to come towards our camera crew. Bruce runs away, followed shortly by Herb. This causes the other crewmen to start running before we see a full-on stampede. The sauropods overtake our crewmen, and we see them running between their legs. This guy gets stepped on, and we get to see why they were spooked in the first place. Venatosaurus, which are a large-sized theropod dinosaur, and are the descendants of a group of non-avian dinosaurs called dromaeosaurids. We will talk about them later though, because it's time to run from them too. This guy gets squished, and Bruce almost gets eaten. We see that Lumpy is still smoking a cigarette while running. A Venatosaurus tries to get at Jack, then Carl, but ends up getting squished. The whole group comes to a cliff edge, where this old guy gets a bit of a nudge, followed by two Brontos. This causes everyone to run while the ledge is falling apart.
Holy shit.
This is epic. How anyone survives this is beyond me. But Bruce takes out a Venatosaurus and inadvertently shoots one of the Brontosaurus's legs, causing a huge tumble, with humans, theropods, and sauropods getting mixed up in a pile of flesh, ending up like a giant tangled knot of legs. The remaining humans take out a few more Venatos and start to climb their way to freedom. They are not off the hook yet though, because the last of the raptors follow them up. Herb can be seen as the last person climbing and calls out to Carl for help, who tries to lift him up via the camera tripod, but Herb gets grabbed and then pulled to the rest of the pack where he is eaten. Rip Herb. The men come to a swamp area next where they do a head count, and we find that 4 of them are dead. Only 4? After this, I would think that almost everyone would be dead. Preston tells Carl that what happened to Herb is not his fault, and Carl takes a swig of his flask and says they're going to donate the proceeds to Herb's wife and kids. And Preston gives a look that says it's going to be his family getting donated to next. Some of the group decides to stay and build rafts to cross the water, while some of the group heads back to the ship. We then cut to Anne pretending to be asleep as King Kong munches on some bamboo. She tries to crawl away before locating a path out and making good on her escape. Never mind. Kong isn't happy that she tried to escape, but she's got a thing for that. Spin moves. Kong is intrigued by her tricks and blown away by this one until he finally gets bored. So he just resorts to pushing her over, like I do to my cat. Anne gets tired of this and tells him no. So Kong throws a shit fit and gets beamed by a rock that he threw. This causes him to get moody and leave, and Anne to make a break for it. Back with our adventure boys, they are crossing the swamp on their makeshift rafts. The air is tense as they watch the water. And I don't know about y'all, but I would not have my legs in the water after seeing what's in this place. Suddenly, Jack spots something coming aboard. A scorpiopede bears its pincers at him. This freaks the crew out as they are surrounded by them. While they are fighting, these scorpiopeds are not arachnids. They are a mix between scorpion and centipede, but have an arachnid-like body plan formed through convergent evolution. We will talk about them later because the crew successfully fights them off without any casualties, but they know the fight is not over. Something large bumps the first raft, and we see a large shadow in the water. The second boat gets split in half by a pteranodon, which is the largest freshwater carnivorous fish on Skull Island, weighing in at 14 tons and 50 foot long. The crewmen in the water struggle to swim to the second raft, and a few sink to the bottom because of their heavy gear, including Jack. Lumpy dives in to save Choi like a true Chad, and Jack tries to stop one of the men from swimming back up to the surface, but the pteranodon gets to him first. Honestly, I don't blame the guy. It's hard to hear or see anything underwater. Next, it's Jack's turn to get chomped on, but he literally runs along the bottom and narrowly avoids getting eaten. Like this fucking close, holy shit. This allows him to resurface. And for anyone wondering, I wasn't able to hold my breath for this underwater part, so I'd be dead. Feel free to try though. Choi is successfully bro-hugged, and Carl starts yelling at Preston to not let go of the camera, when this guy gets got. His hands moving around and the screaming inside the mouth are such cool touches. Well, Carl is done with this shit and shoots the raft in half by accident, but he saves Jack from ending up in a kill count video. Everyone starts to make it back to shore, and Carl tests if his camera is still working, capturing this guy's unfortunate death, and creating the first live leak video. Hell yeah! Despite what just happened, the men push on. And holy shit, they're going through all of this for a girl they just met like a week ago.
About a week ago.
You guys need to get some friends like these. Anyways, they hear something in the brush, so Lumpy starts blasting. We find out that he's taken out a Brutornis, which is Skull Island's largest phorestricid that usually inhabits the island plains. More about them later though, because we have a tree to cross. Mr. Hayes hears something ahead and decides to check it out. He yells for everyone to go back though, and starts unloading on something. We see King Kong emerge and grab our boy. He does his best to distract Kong from everyone, but gets thrown against the cliff wall, falling into the pit below. This scene still gets me to this day. Everyone feels the loss, so they start shooting Kong in response. This just pisses him off, and he starts shaking the tree bridge, causing some to fall, including Choi. Rip Choi, you were a real one. Some would say this is an overreaction, but Kong keeps twisting the bridge until it falls into the pit below. We're then back to Anne, who is having a romp through the woods, which stops being fun when she runs into a photodon, which is a large and crocodilian-like Nodosuchian from the jungles of Skull Island. They largely resemble Postosuchus and may indicate an evolved form. We will talk about them later. Anne doesn't like all these fun facts I'm talking about and starts to retreat. Oh, also, that thing it's eating may be a Ligocristus, or a species of hadrosaurid ornithopod dinosaur that is found on Skull Island. Maybe we'll talk about them later, if I'm not feeling hangry. Speaking of hangry, another photodon comes face to face with Anne. It goes for the munch, but she puts her Chevre legs into 6th gear and sprints into a rotted tree. The photodon follows her in, but notice that his ass is suddenly missing. It gets dragged out and yoked around, causing the other one to flee in terror. She then watches as a megapede comes out to test its riz. It lets her know that it's a species of arthropod, resembling a centipede, and that its diet consists only of meat. This doesn't work for some reason, and she rushes out, coming face to face with a Vastatosaurus rex. They are a large tyrannosaurid from Skull Island, descended from Tyrannosaurus. We will talk about their evolved forms later, as it's time to chase and eat Anne. She runs away from it, barefoot may I add, and manages to hide in plain sight, like a game of prop. But she misses the fact that there is a second, larger one right next to her. She dodges a few nibbles, but ends up hanging on for dear life. This is when Kong comes into White Knight. He grabs Anne and starts to fight against the dinosaur when the other one comes in to join. Kong is not amused by this, but he forgot that he actually queued up in a trios lobby, so now it's a 3v1 situation. He beats some ass, and for some reason all 3 Vastatosaurs are just gunning for Anne. Like, they will not stop trying to eat her. Kong lightly places a rock on this dino's head. The other 2 get mad and push Kong to the edge of a cliff, but he overpowers them and knocks them off. But one grabs his little monkey foot and drags him down too. Now Anne, Kong, and the 2 dinos are suspended in the air with vines. Our big boy puts on some whoop ass while Anne tries to avoid getting eaten. One of the Rexes actually learns to push itself off the cliff wall to swing over to Anne. This almost works, but Kong grabs his shit right before Anne gets got. Anne somehow doesn't get eaten, like 6 times in a row here, and everyone falls to the ground below, except this one. Now it's time to finish this. Honestly, Kong beats the ever-loving shit out of this guy. Like, he is no match for monkey mode, and Kong almost rips his face off and then crushes his skull in, even adding some disrespect in there. Hell yeah. Real talk though, did anyone else have this Rex toy as a kid? It could eat the people and like poop them out? It was pretty cool. Let me know down in the comments. Anyways, Monkey Man has earned Anne's admiration, and they ride off into the sunset. Meanwhile, the dudes actually trying to rescue Anne start waking up. Down in the pit, we start to see many creepies start crawling. Jack scares them with the power of the sun, and we get some heartfelt scenes as our crew agonizes over the deaths of their friends. But more importantly than that, Carl finds out his camera broke. Even more importantly though, the flare burns out, and the horrors of the pit bare their fangs. Like these Carnictus, the blood-like parasitic worms go straight for Troy and Lumpy. Our cook fights back before being jumped by a Weta Rex. These prehistoric crickets, related to the Wetas of New Zealand, present a problem for Jack too. Lumpy goes back for Troy and decapitates a few of the worms before one starts eating up his leg. Carl decides that right now is going to be his Joker moment, and he goes ham on a Decarnocymex and some Wetas. We see Venture Crewman 12 try to climb out, only to be eaten by a Deplector. Same, Jimmy. Same. Our crewmen continue to beat some ass, but Lumpy ends up getting eaten, in probably the most horrifying way to go on Skull Island. Jimmy ends up with a gun and starts shooting the Wetas off Jack. Real talk though, look at how he is shooting that thing. Jack would be dead as fuck. He soon runs out of ammo, and we see that our group is super screwed, with Arachnoclaws, Wetas, and Decarnocymex closing in. But then, bullets start flying. Captain Eaglehorn and friends start shooting the insects from above. Bruce takes this time to swing around and shoot like a true Chad, allowing our remaining 3 to escape. We are then forced to cut back to Anne, because everything has to be about her, where we see that Kong is likely the last of his kind. She sees that big monkey is sad, and tries to cheer him up with some tricks. It doesn't work though, and they settle for sitting and watching the sunset. Okay, back to the cool dudes. Captain Eaglehorn takes a moment to call Carl a cockroach, to which Carl says he's a successful cockroach at least. We see that everyone has climbed up one side of the ravine, except for Jack. The captain tells him to give it up, but Carl says that he will rescue Anne, and that the ape will be hard on Jack's tail. He tells the captain that they can use the chloroform to capture him and come out of this on top. Captain is having none of it though, for now. They yell that they'll keep the gate open and part ways. Next we see Jack making his way up to Kong, having to pass below some Terrapusmerdax. These winged rodents are convergent replacements to both bats and pterosaurs. This doesn't bother the Jack Driscoll though, as he finds a sleeping Anne in Kong's arms. He wakes her up, and the stench of love in the air also wakes Kong up. The big monkey tries to smash our boy, causing the Terrapusmerdax to wake up and attack Kong in force. Great, now everyone is awake and cranky. Seizing their opportunity, Anne and Jack make a run for it, but Kong isn't ready to let go. Fortunately, Jack is and grabs a hold of a flying rodent. They make it all the way down the mountain, and man does Kong get pissed. So pissed in fact that he runs right after them. Our pair make it to a bridge that's not quite lowered, and we see that Carl is waiting on the other side to drop it at the right moment. Preston can't handle the pressure and cuts the line. And as Anne crosses the gate, she sees that they are planning on capturing Kong. And once Kong is through, they actually do a pretty good job at holding him down. Jack makes the mistake of forcing Anne back to the boat though, and Kong gets double mad, launching crewmen all over the place. Captain Eaglehorn does the sensible thing and just tells everyone to run for their lives. Some crewmen get smashed on their retreat, but they make it to the boats, except for this guy. Kong doesn't care about things like boats and smashes one. On the flip side, Captain Eaglehorn does care about things like boats, so he harpoons Kong in the knee. I used to be a monkey like you until I took a... Carl takes this opportunity to smash the last chloroform bottle on Kong's face, causing him to pass out. Before he does, though, he reaches out to Anne one last time. This legit made me cry as a kid. Not now, though. I am a man. Carl boasts about his new eighth wonder of the world and his future riches, when we then cut to a busy New York street with Kong's name up in lights. We see Anne getting ready to be part of a big play that she always wanted to be in, and Carl can be seen shaking the hands of the rich and the important, including those film investors from the very beginning. Everyone is buddy-buddy now, except for Preston, who shows a knowing frown when they lock eyes, as they both understand what and who it took to get here. The show must go on, however, and Carl takes the stage to a theater full of people. He introduces himself and tells the audience that 17 people gave their lives to capture Kong. But after going back and counting, I think the actual number is closer to 35. Anyways, Kong is revealed all chained up to the crowd's surprise. Then a play starts with lots of dancing and characters very similar to the 1976 King Kong movie. Not that King Kong himself is very impressed at the reference. He reacts though when Anne is brought out for the show, and then repulsed by the Anne lookalike. This causes him to flip out, and all the camera flashes cause him to break free. Where's Captain Eaglehorn when you need him? Kong immediately throws that hoe and starts killing people, but when he spots Jack, it becomes personal. Once outside, Kong causes like 18 car wrecks in 10 seconds and tosses more hoes. Jack hops in a taxi and gets Kong's attention so he'll stop fucking with the masses. And a gorilla on car chase ensues. Man, what a time to live in New York. Kong ends up destroying a bunch of shit and people chasing Jack though, so I'm not sure if it was really worth. It also doesn't end well for him. But at least Kong finds Anne. They have a moment and he does a scoop. They stroll around town for a bit, even finding the time to play around on a frozen lake. Oh, how fun. And then the army ruins everything by trying to blow them up. Kong is having none of it though. He breaks through some army vehicles before going to the high ground. I also like that this truck is just fucking shooting rounds at Kong and hitting the buildings around him. Fuck those people. It's not long before he finds the Empire State Building, and shortly thereafter he climbs to the top, where Anne and him watch the sun rise over the concrete jungle. But some Curtiss F-8C Helldivers decide to ruin it by showing up to kill him. Kong squares up with them alone, and he gets shot a lot, but manages to take out a plane with his fist, as well as throwing one plane into another, which I think for no other way of fighting back besides just some hands is pretty damn good. Anne manages to climb her way up to Kong to have another moment and try to convince the pilots to stop shooting, which actually works. And for a moment, we think things might actually turn out okay for Kong. But all those bullets have taken their toll on the big guy, and after one final strafing run and one of the most emotional non-verbal goodbyes I've ever seen, Kong falls from the tallest building in New York to his death. Carl shows up to say some dumb shit about Beauty killing the beast, but I just saw what happened. It was definitely the airplanes and bullets. And with that, our movie ends. And this is by far the greatest adventure film ever made. I will fight you if you disagree.